All right, so week's over. So just have a quick look around a couple of charts to see how things sort of finished up. Um, Firstly, just having a look at gold here. So this played out very well. So if you were sort of watching my videos, I think it was Wednesday that I was saying we were around this period here. I was saying that look, this could potentially be building into some sort of inverted head and shoulders pattern. Obviously, we had this sort of push down here, which was sort of that news-driven event from mainly from the retail sales, ECB as well, on I think that was a Thursday night. But as I said in that one there, I was looking to get long and did so just around I think it was 1902. Well, it was 1902 that I got long, but it was around that zone lower, and it has just sort of taken off since. So yeah, like 1919 was the call from start of Friday's session in Asia, where we can sort of see here, we were saying that, look, this is where the sellers were. And this was the point that I was saying in that video, that it needed to prove itself above. And if we get these ones out above here, we can see, bang, closed out above this zone here. Sellers were pushing it down. Sellers were pushing it down. As soon as we know that the sellers are depleted, this is the point of these resistance lines. The sellers are depleted here. Okay, we can look for the top side moves and that. So the initial one pretty much held to the center because I said 1919 was the first stop. As you can see, we sort of came up here, hit this sort of 1919 zone. Beautifully, bang, push back down, and then sort of sort of gave it a little bit of a quite a nice sort of break of this falling resistance, somewhat sort of channel that it's been hanging on for most of the month. So you can see that it sort of comes out here. We might be able to see it a bit better on the 4 hour as well, but you can see break, close out the side, little back test, and then bang away. And it really took out those second price targets, which is coming in exactly where we sort of thought it would be. Because as I said, look, you just got to look for where the sellers been recently. We know they've been here, and this is why I've got the area marked out. And of course, as I said, looking for this potential inverted head and shoulders to come back up here and test this neckline. It was never going to go all the way through, particularly obviously as well, sort of Friday session as well. And US dollar still seems to be kicking on despite some sort of late week sort of weaker kind of US data. Except for the Michigan, actually, the Michigan report I think was quite good, but then they had a bit of a mix of data, but we'll get to that in a moment. But as I said, you can see here, as we've seen previously, market says, no, look, I'm not going to have it past this point. 1930 was the second price target, comes up here and it's hit it. So things to take away from this are that, charts love to sort of replicate the moves, like as in it was choppy through this area here. You can expect the next time that the price visits this level, you're going to get this sort of choppiness again. So we're going to get something that potentially moves like this through next week. It's not a guarantee that the inverted head and shoulders that I've planned out will pay off. Obviously, if it does, we look for the close above this 1930 zone, just like we looked for the close above 1915 or 1913, sorry, it was over here. That's what we're looking for. We know sellers here, we know sellers are here, we know sellers are here, we know sellers are here, sellers are here. This is a much larger sort of time frame or sort of area over a greater expanse of time. So we're going to see more selling. It's going to be heavier and harder to get through this zone here. So even if we come back down and push up a second, it may take 2 or 3 times, as you can see with this little up down here, before we do get a breakout. But if we can get this close outside the area where we know that the sellers are, which is this big sort of zone through the middle here at 1930, we get a close out here, we look for some sort of back test, and then on we go. And, then we're sort of looking at the 1940s, which again, you just sort of move up one more level. We know sellers are here. We know we know the sellers are around here. And you might be able to see this better on the sort of daily chart. And you can see that sort of this was a big sort of top area for us here. So we know that there's like a lot of sellers coming down in this area here. So what we're sort of looking for again is just these repeat sort of price agents. But see how we sort of, if we start on the lower time frame, we go to 1 hour, we can see we beat the sellers at this sort of 1913 and we took off. This move to the top side here with the break and back test allowed us to get out of this channel. So then, bang, it took off again. So we've got the sellers taking care of that then. So now we sort of go to a larger time frame of that, and we say, if this plays out into the inverted head and shoulders, we've got our distance. I'm not including this little bit down here. To me, this little drop down here to 1900, apart from the fact that it was news driven, this seems very trappy to me. I think this is sort of really more your baseline here. As you can see, we had sort of buyers here, buyers here, buyers here, even sort of as we sort of came back through buyers here. This area down underneath here, I feel that's sort of sucked in some shorts, stopped out some longs. We got right down to that sort of round number. So I'm not including this in the sort of measured move for myself anyway. So I'm looking for this to sort of push back up as it has. It's hit the 1900. I expect some consolidation through this zone through the next week. So when you do these things, you can, when you're looking for them to replicate, a good amount of time generally, as you can see, is the length of time of one shoulder can be pretty much the length of time of the next shoulder. You know, this is obviously not an exact science, but you can see that almost this area here, like I've probably sort of actually taken this a little bit early, but this area to sort of go through this area, this shoulder here is almost equivalent to what we've got down the bottom. So we could probably almost expect something up here, which takes us through till about sort of Thursday before we either sort of see necessarily a bit more of a breakdown and sort of, you know, potentially sort of revisit lows and form a bit of a range. If we break this line here, come back down the range. But again, I'm looking for the top side move. So back to what I was saying, that sort of like we sort of got the break of this horizontal, this allowed us to break the falling resistance channel. We'd be looking for this on a larger time frame. So if we can get the break here, push up, close outside, break back to the top side here, this will be doing exactly the same as what happened here. Because if you zoom out and we go on to the 4 hour, or probably even actually probably maybe see a bit better on the daily, that will then, if we get that play out, you can see where the measured move is taking us. Measured move is taking us back up into the sell zone here, where we know that the sellers have been previously. So sellers, 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 sellers. So we know that the sellers are going to be here. So we're not going to go through this area straight away. We're going to sort of come up here and we're going to see price reject back down. So what we can get in this sort of scenario is if we can get a break here, it can hit this measured move. That's fine. We know it'll be sold down. It's not going to go past 1950 straight away because we know that sellers have been there. The sellers are going to try one more time, at least at this level, if not 2 or 3 days. Because again, the higher time frame you go up on, the stronger the resistance support, the more meaningful these sort of levels are. So we can see it sort of come up here, but the takeaway with that is that this is potentially a bit of a channel that is attempting to form. Obviously, if this was going to continue to go down, we could have been looking around sort of, you know, 1860s kind of thing, and you would have said, okay, well, look, you know, here's the angle that the sellers have been coming down on. It's only fair that you'd sort of say if it was a channel, buyers would be sort of waiting down the bottom here again. I mean, it could have been a couple of dollars here and there with it all, but yeah. Anyway, so that if that takes us out the top here, the idea then would be to get sold back down from this area, which we know it'll happen, retest the top side of this channel, and then sort of come up here. And again, it's just repeat. We want to get the close outside. If we get the close outside, we're already outside the channel, like this one had on the lower time frame, outside the channel, retest, and then bang, back up there. And, you know, this is obviously not going to be happening sort of overnight. But then you're looking at sort of like, where have we seen the sellers? And these are going to be like the big ones here. Like, you know, a bit more of a sort of minor zone around this sort of 60 area, which we know sort of like was a bit of a hassle. But the big one is the 80s. The 80s, again, if you zoom right back out, if we look at this, if we drag it right across, how many times it held going up here. Like, I remember trading this and I was just like, these were just buys after buys after buys after buys. This was before the large spike to sort of the all-time high kind of thing. And that was sort of like really driven by the sort of, I think it was the banking crisis. All those sort of small regional banks and that in the US were sort of failing at the time and everyone was like, bang. And that's what sort of catapulted gold up to the highs. But back to the sort of technical side of it, you're seeing how strong it was here, and then boom, how strong it was here, and then here, and then here. So this is the line in the sand for us. This is the big one. Once we get through this, there's a good chance that you've got a lot of sort of built up liquidity and stops that are sitting just above this zone here, and then we're going to sort of shoot into the 2000s quite quickly. Of course, this is like planning ahead kind of thing, so we've got a bit of way to go. But first things first, you've got to get over these small levels, then we get over the medium levels, then we get up to at least testing the main levels. So yeah, gold actually played out beautifully. So as you can see, sort of end of the night, end of the week, sort of sold off a little bit into the close. That's fine. We knew the sellers were going to be there. A lot of people, I mean, it had just run up from Thursday. It run up from $30 move. That's decent for gold. I mean, anybody that's got in down here, like I took profits in the 19s. I think I took the last profit at 26. So yeah, no, it certainly went pretty strong, and a sell-off, and that's nothing to be too concerned about. Mainly this week coming forward, I'm going to be looking for some range play, and then certainly if we can get up the top up here. We're going to call that the major breakout. Well, I guess not a major breakout, but it's going to be that head and shoulders major breakout. Let's yeah, inverted head and shoulders. It's not the major. 1980s are major. All right, boom. So it was looking pretty good. Flipping across to Aussie. Aussie again played quite well. Didn't quite get up to that price target. I admittedly sort of scaled out a lot of mine. I got rid of the last ones around 71, so right up near the top here. Look, if people can hold them up to their price targets and all this kind of stuff, well, good on them. But I'm really just here to make money. So I took my profits, sort of scaled out on the way up here. Left a little bit on the table because I think I sort of popped off a couple at like around the sort of 60, 64, 65 kind of area in that. But yeah, as I said, the last one's off at 71. Had a little sort of shot again around 50 on this pullback. Took out a couple of little bits in that, but yeah, nothing too substantial. Obviously, coming into the end of the week, there was nothing to be gained by that there. The close on Aussie, similar with gold. Okay, yes, it sold down a little bit. We'll go over to DXY in a moment because that was obviously a bit of strength that sort of came with that. Isn't great because we know that Aussie fundamentally is super weak. I mean, the RBA haven't been doing anything. The Fed is still, well, US are coming out with some strong data constantly. For the most part, particularly in the latter part of the week, Aussie really shrugged off any sort of US dollar strength. You could see, like from the videos that I was doing, yeah, it was heavily impacted, but the thing is, it was bought up every single time. And every time it's sort of sold back down, bang, buyers are happy to take it back up, happy to take it back up. You got to look at a lot of the China news because that's really what's driving Aussie at the moment. And China's just been so woefully just pathetic for a while, but they're coming back now, and they seem to be pumping a whole bunch of cash into the system, trying to sort of rectify themselves. Honestly, I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit of a sort of short-lived thing. I don't think you can just say, hey, look at this, we're going to print all the money and everything's going to be okay. It doesn't fix the underlying problem. So I think there's definitely going to be a sort of bit of a rough road for them sort of moving forward. But certainly in the short term, market loves all the little bits of news, and Aussie sort of punched on accordingly with that. Sort of short term, it sort of tried to hold this area here. You could see even one last time coming into Friday night. There's a couple of big spike up here. This last one, I'm pretty sure, as I said, it was I think it was a consumer confidence or something like this, Michigan consumer confidence or something like this for the US, and that gave US dollar a quick little sell off, Aussie a little pump. But then obviously, yeah, it sort of still sold into that. So if you have a look on the daily, if you go back to last weekend's video, you can see my idea of what I was sort of planning for. We had the two options. Look, it was either going to break down. This is still possible. Certainly, that's quite an ugly daily candle. And if this zone does break, well, you're still looking at whenever it breaks to something like this. Um, I don't think this is going to come, at least in the short term, because if it's similar with the gold, we've got this channel. We've actually got two breaks on this. We've got the break, we've got the back test, lower than the breakout point, stop out anybody that got in nice and early, consolidation, and it's pushed through. I think we're going to be seeing, similar with gold, a little bit of a ranging moving through here. This is about 100-point range or so. So I expect a little bit of sort of back and forth. Certainly you're not getting any V-shaped recovery coming out here. And with that sell down, it actually, as I said, it sort of ended up with quite an ugly sort of daily candle. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of sort of pushback in that sort of in early trading on Monday morning. But we'll have to sort of wait and see. I think this is a good level here to sort of say, hey, in the short term, this is what we want to stay above. But certainly the 64.50s and 64.20, so 30-point range in the middle here. I would say these are your kind of intermediate levels, but I would expect any time you come back down to 64, it's going to be bought up again. And likewise, I don't think we're going past 65 without some sort of catalyst. And really, that needs to be continued sort of China strength. And hopefully, maybe one day, the RBA actually get off their ass and do something as well. Copper punching along nicely. You can see this sort of really came up. This is on the day, so you can see it actually dropped a little bit short of coming up to this top zone here. But as I said, sort of like, the whole way through, you can see where we've marked it out. You can see where we was expecting the sellers to be, and what happened, bang, sold it down hard. Second effort, bang, sold it down again. So, you can just pick these things. It's not rocket science. You just sort of repeat where you've sort of seen that these guys have been doing things. You go, okay, well, this is where they've been previously. I can pretty much guarantee, for whatever reason, fundamental or technical, they're going to sort of be valuing it and saying, look, this is my get off point, or this is my add to the shorts point, whatever you want to call it. And prices reacted exactly so. So this is what we were sort of calling through the week. This was Monday's session. Moved back up towards the top side here. Charted out beautifully. It worked beautiful. Excuse me. Big push on Monday morning, consolidation for a few days, and then a couple more upside moves. And again, this is also helping Aussie with its strength. So we're really starting to come towards the end here. As I keep sort of mentioning pretty much every video, we've still got to probably a better part of a month, if not more, till we sort of, if we're going to really sort of come to the tip of this, to sort of see how it plays out. But you can see last week I thought we may have got down a little bit lower to sort of get a springboard back up, but generally the consensus was, as you can see here, bang, back up here, charted and played out beautifully. China, it's, waffling around, but it's, as I said, the wedge is really being tested here. So, they saw that first sort of pushback as soon as we came down here, and it sort of fired up. We were looking for the break of this lower wick, which obviously, you may have got it to a millimeter or so, but that's why you don't put it right on the line. We wanted a sort of continual sort of break to the downside here. Like, it would have been nice to get a big sort of yellow candle or bearish candle punching through here to say, okay, we're going to be coming down a little bit lower. Main trend is still the price target. As to where that comes, well, we sort of wait and see. Again, these are the things. You're not going to get a break of this first time. As it comes back here, there are buyers that have been waiting and waiting and waiting. They didn't get sucked in. Maybe they did get sucked in, and maybe they'll bail once this sort of more short-term trend breaks. However, when price comes back to here, you're going to get a springboard. Things don't break on first attempts. You need 2 or 3 goes at things. You need to weaken them. You need to sort of weaken them again and then sort of push through. So certainly, I think once we do get back to this main trend here, which is, as I keep sort of repeating, my price target, we're going to see something like this, and then that's going to be your push to go down there. So this will then turn into a bit of a resistance once we can sort of prove to the bottom side of it. Then we've got to see if it can hold as a resistance. Second effort here, and then we can start to look down to these zones over here. So this would be sort of our next sort of price target once this trend breaks. As the trend, it could sort of push back up here, come back down here, and then sort of come down to over here. But as a horizontal, wherever this moves or however long it takes to get to it, again, we've seen that the buyers have been here previously over this zone here. So we can assume that they're going to come in here. We can assume they're going to come in here. So wherever that sort of happens to be, where it comes into contact with this. And this is why we have sort of multiple price targets, because, there's no point sort of saying that this is your price target. It comes down here and then fires back up the top here. You got to get paid. And so this is why you take off portions, or at least for myself, I don't go all in, all out. I'll scale in and I'll scale out. And that's why sort of like it'll look like I'll have quite a few trades throughout the week, but it'll be, 2 or 3 or 4 sort of general ideas, but then I'll be sort of like hammering these things in and out along the way. I'm trading. I'm not looking to invest in these things. So that's still the consensus is sort of coming to the downside. RSI is a little bit sort of bottoming out here. It doesn't look to me like it's not. I mean, it's certainly still coming down negative, and it can push down a little bit lower, even though it is in this oversold area. So I wouldn't be saying that, yes, we're about to get a tip up. You can see the difference between this area over here, where it's actually converging together and then sort of starting to sort of turn up. This second moving average down here is just still pushing down, and you see the blue is tipping down a little bit as well. So I would expect certainly at least a little bit of consolidation around this zone. Gives it a higher chance that you might start to see a bit of a push up, the fact that it is oversold and coming down into support, but it doesn't mean that it can't stay oversold for a continued period as it does push down through here. But it does mean that sort of if you do get your breakthrough down here, it's another thing saying that, look, buyers are going to be ready to sort of turn it back up, and that could be a little bit of a sort of dribble along the bottom here with the oversold, could come to this price target here and then start to sort of move up. So I think that's certainly what I'll be looking for if we get this break down here. And finally, we can tick across to DXY, which has just been absolutely crazy. I said that in the last week's video that we were going to be getting a little bit of USD weakness come through this week. We got the break of this channel, came down beautifully, looked like it was going to go, and then obviously news driven, see it a little bit better on the 4 hour, it just took off. So anyway, I've covered this throughout the week, and that sort of big break there, that was initially done just prior to ECB, and then the retail sales just really just went bang with it all. But excuse me, we've got the pullback was what we were saying here, and this is what's interesting with this, because as sort of start of Friday's session on the Asia, I was saying that, look, they were sort of in this tight little range here. It was a little sell down with DXY to open. So you can see slight little gap up, and it sold down, and then bang, sort of cut through here. This was on some China data China news. China data? I can't remember. It was something out of China that sort of punched it through this area here, and we saw a continued sort of sell down, not sell off necessarily, of the US dollar and that. Even with these rally attempts, you can see it's still sort of really thinking, what is it going to do through this zone here? I mean, it's just been so unbelievably strong, but the risk to reward on these moves after a while, particularly as we flip back onto here, you can see it's coming into this big heavy resistance, and sellers here, sellers here, sellers here. Well, what do we think is going to happen over here? You're going to have sellers. Like, it's just, it's not rocket science. These things very rarely cut through in one go. Not to say that it can't consolidate this area and then punch through, and also not to say that it can't actually just continue to punch through. US is getting very strong sort of data coming out at the moment, so they are having the little bits and pieces that are sort of saying that, yes, they can justify a little bit of a move forward, and then possibly then if you look above this, you're looking around this zone here where we've seen sellers. Well, this will be the next one, this area here. So around the 107 to 107.80 and change kind of thing. This also comes into the 127 retracement of, actually no, screw that. Oh yes, if this sort of moved down here, actually this is an old one. Probably shouldn't have that one through here. So this will be coming here. And yeah, sort of coming up to the 161 of that last sort of drive down. But to me, as I've still been saying, I still think that we're going to see some cooling off soon. I have been sort of mainly trading this large trend line here, broke underneath and kept powering through and powering through. So I'm sure there's a lot of the portion of the market that's just been caught out with this sort of stuff here. But if we get back down onto the lower time frames, certainly for the moment, this was the drive on, clean this up a bit. This was the drive on news, and we were saying that 38% was a potential position where we were going to see buyers step back in. You can see the previous sort of support, buyers have been buying it here, and then obviously they're trying to hold it a little bit higher here, but sort of came back down, went through the 38, and sort of just maintained it in this consolidation. So, same as everything else, a close to the top side here, away we go. We look for the higher levels, a close down the bottom side here, and we look for a little bit of cooling off. Generally, when you get these big sort of news event driven candles, these things love to sort of like come back and just basically take out anybody that didn't take profit in that period. So, you could see it sort of come back over here, and this would be your sort of potential sort of little area that you can see buyers sort of step in again. But yeah, certainly DXY loves really deep pullbacks as well, I've noticed. So, it's not to sort of say that the trend's dead just because you get a 61 or 78% pullback on a move. So really it could come down here and then keep on firing up. So, there's a lot of levels that it's got to break to the downside to turn this ship around, particularly when you look at this on these kind of things here. This is just absolutely hammering, 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 and it flipped and held a fairly decent close towards the top up here on its weekly. But its weekly is overbought. I mean, this is what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 9 weeks of straight bullish candles. I mean, at some point, surely it must sort of come back. And I know that's sort of like the famous last words, but yeah. Anyway, that's just the DXY. Cool. All right, that's it for me. I'm off for 2 weeks, going to Kuala Lumpur. So we'll probably I'll definitely be keeping an eye on the markets. Videos might be a little bit slower and in between, but that's cool. And sort of come back and attack the markets in a couple of weeks. Cool. That's it from me.